The film begins by promoting the forthcoming match in the 1958 FIFA World Cup. The match is between Brazil and the Soviet Union. There is a large throng visible. Fearing for the game as the commentary is all negative and condemning Brazil's style of play, the scene turns to Brazil's locker room, where Pelé, the youngest player ever to participate in the World Cup, is introduced. Following that, the scene flashes back 8 years to a group of children cleaning shoes and yearning to play football due to the tough living conditions. The kids don't have a suitable football to play with. As a result, they take clothing from their neighborhood and put it into socks to construct a football. Soon after, the gang begins to play with the self-made football is thrown from roof to roof without touching. Later, one of the youngsters participating in football Deco gets chastised by his mother for arriving home filthy. In the next scenario, a group of guys, including Deco's father, are seated in a cafe and listening to a football broadcast. Everyone is rooting for Brazil in the 1950 FIFA World Cup final between Brazil and Uruguay. To win the game, the youngsters may also be seen on the restaurant's shattered roof gathering information about the current game. Unfortunately, Brazil loses the game. Watching his father mourn, Deco's father falls into tears. Deco pledges to win the World Cup for his country. The next day, Deco's mother drives him to her employer, a massive mansion, to sweep the floors. There, she tells him about how his father's football career was wrecked by an injury, and why she doesn't want him to play football. As soon as she goes out of the kitchen, a group of affluent lads arrives and begins discussing various football stars. Deco also attempts to join in on their chat, using the name of a local football player, Pelé, but mispronounces it as Pale. The lads mock him and begin mocking him with the same epithet, Pale. Meanwhile, Deco's mother returns and requests that he apologize to the boys, despite the fact that he was not at fault before leaving. Deco takes a piece of newspaper from the boys that mentions a football event. Following that, we show Deco and his crew approaching and enrolling in the same football competition. Despite the fact that they appear poor and have no proper football uniform, they have incredible football abilities to leave behind almost every team in the league. They quickly advance to the finals, where they face the same team of lads that mocked Deco at his mother's office. The lads are much older than Deco and his bunch, and they also have real football gear. The gang's leader makes fun of the other group, calling them shoeless boys, because Deco's team is competing in the competition. After hearing the insults, his squad vows to buy football boots at any cost for the upcoming game. Later, the group prepares to steal peanuts and sell them to obtain second-hand boots, but they are caught in the process by the vendor, Che. Deco and his crew, on the other hand, manage to sneak out and make it to the market in the next scene. While the gang is selling peanuts to the public, the finalist boys reach there and begin insulting them once more. Deco becomes enraged by their remarks and punches the leader, leading in a brawl between the two groups at home, where the mother confronts him about the injuries. Deco's father intervenes and explains that he will meet the teacher the next day, to which he answers that his instructor hit him. Once the mother has left, Deco's father drives him to his office, telling him on the way that he knows about the quarrel in the football game. Instead of becoming upset, he encourages that Deco put his emotions at bay and respond to his opponents with his talents. Knowing that his father is at his side, Deco feels relieved when the big day approaches. Everyone in the room is rooting for the affluent lads. They also poke fun of Deco by referring to him as Pelé. Deco and his squad were eventually able to obtain football boots, although they look to be too large for their size. However, they continue to wear the painful boots, which slows Deco and his squad. Using this as an advantage, the other team scores goal after goal, bringing the score to 6-0. Deco and his crew are helpless in the circumstances and enraged at their opponent's dirty play. Deco, enraged, seeks to assault the opponents, but he comes to a halt when he notices his father in the audience. He then chooses to remove his uncomfortable shoes and continue playing the game like they did in their neighborhoods. After that, he grabs the ball and dodges around his opponents, stunning the crowd and scores the opening goal. Soon, his teammates remove their huge footwear and begin playing their style. The game soon takes a dramatic change, as the Deco squad begins to dominate. His teammates were all able to dribble between the opponents and score goals, bringing the score to 6-5. Unfortunately, Deco and his team lose the game, but the audience appeared charmed by their hypnotic display. Everyone immediately begins shouting the name. When the game is ended, they recognize the man from whom they stole the peanuts the day before. The guys pursue them, leading the little lads to flee into the forest. Peely's pal trips and falls on the ground after tripping over a branch. Pell returns to assist him and leads him to a little hole in the earth where he may hide. It suddenly begins to rain, and there is a landslide. Curse! This buries his companion, and he eventually dies. A sad Pale goes home and sobs in front of his mother, blaming himself for the death of his comrade. The next day, Peleg's father brings him to work to divert him from his friend's sorrow. He attempts to cheer him up by demonstrating some of his abilities while playing with mangoes. Pale had been ignoring him for a few days, but subsequently joins him in his practice with the mangoes. Pele is now 15 years old. A few years later, when his mother watches him practicing with his father, she decides to hire a football scout named Waldemar de Brito to come watch him play. When Pele arrives home, he is relieved to discover Waldemar waiting for him. Waldemar advises that Pele join in the local football club's tryouts. Pele is practicing for professional football with the Santos football team in the following scene. He gets off to a shaky start and struggles to adjust to the traditional football approach. Pele, dissatisfied with his performance, chooses to return home while on the train. Waldemar approaches him and inquires about the cause for his return. Pele responds that he believes his style of play is not appreciated in the academy and that the coach dislikes him. Waldemar adds that his football technique is known as the Jinga style, which was popular during the slave era. He believes that he plays best in the same way, but adds that it was blamed for Brazil's World Cup defeat in 1950. Finally, he advises Pele to either remain and prove his brilliance to the world, or to return home as a coward. Pele considers for a bit after Waldemar goes and chooses to stay. The next day, while playing a match, Pele makes several poor decisions that irritate both himself and his coach. He recalls him and his father exercising with the mangoes and watches Waldemar applauding for him. He then starts to play the manner he knows he will receive. Pulls and dribbles it with ease between the opponent's legs. He kicks the ball in the air, just as he did with the mangoes, and it goes into the net for a goal. The coach is astounded by Pele's goal-scoring technique and requests that he repeat it. Pele scores again, shocking the audience with his old football style. Despite being the team's youngest member, he continues to do it with other teams and begins to make a reputation for himself. After his vacation, Pele pays a surprise visit to his house, bearing gifts for the family, including a radio for his father, soon after being promoted from the junior squad to the pro team and playing matches with teams all around the nation. They decide to listen to the unveiling of Brazil's World Cup selection for 1958. Pele has no chance of making the national squad since he is too young. Regardless, they listen to the announcement and, to their astonishment, Pele is chosen for the squad. During Pele's departure with the national team, his father encourages him to trust in himself and his football style. Pele departs and subsequently meets with his teammates, who appear to be cordial. However, the reporters present made fun of Brazil's Jenga-style football at the international level. The national team coach then contacts Pele for a meeting and advises him not to play the Jenga style. Pele tries to play the traditional European method, as instructed by the coach, the next day, but finds it tough. He then decides to go his own way, but he is tripped and injures his knee as a result. The team doctor checks him and unfortunately confirms that the injury will keep him out of the World Cup in the evening. Pele contacts his mother to notify her of his injuries. His mother is taken aback, but encourages him to have faith and take care of himself. Half of the World Cup begins, and the Brazilian squad wins a number of early games due to the games being too cruel and intense. Several team members are injured, leaving them with no other options. Pele is invited to represent his country. Nervous, Pele makes a few reasons, but his coach insists on his playing. In the following scene, Pele and his squad enter the field with their coach, who reminds them to keep to the plan and play conventional football. During the game, Pele follows his coach's advice and the Brazilian team wins. The next game is against France in the semifinals. The Brazilian squad is trailing France after the first half, 1-0. During the break, Pele glances around the locker room, noticing the wounded and exhausted teammates. He becomes frustrated and asks one of his teammates about replacing him in the second half, but his teammate declines. refuses, claiming that he is not mentally fit to play football. He goes on to say that he is tired of the conventional European style of football and wants to play Jenga as they did when they were kids. Finally, he advises that Pelé play Jenga football to win the game for his squad. Pelé returns to the game after the break, and when he misses a pass, he recalls his teammates telling him to play the jingle way. Pelé immediately attacks the ball and begins dribbling with ease and precision amongst the players. Everyone is taken aback as they see Pelé bouncing the ball over the players to score a magnificent goal for his team. After the scores are equal, Pelé scores 2 more goals to give his team the win and a place in the finals. Because of this, the final against Sweden approaching, the Brazilian national coach convenes a team conference and instructs the players to play conventional football. He attempts to teach them some cunning strategies and suggests that they emulate the Swedish players' arrangement in the game. He attempts to have the players play with formations throughout training but sees little improvement. During the press conference between the two teams, the Swedish team's coach mocks Brazil's style of play. He goes on to say that if Brazil continues to play the same way it did in 1950, they would lose in the finals. Brazil's coach walks out of the conference, frustrated with the opponent's coach for depressing the national squad. Pelé phones his father late at night to inform him of the team's perilous predicament. Hearing this, his father proposes that he form a team, like he did when he was a youngster. Good. Pelé challenges the players the next day to take the ball from the hotel to the nearest lighthouse in order to unite the squad. Initially, all of the players refuse to participate, but they soon agree to do so. They begin kicking the ball about without allowing it to contact the ground. When the coach sees this, he knows that what he is teaching is incorrect. The group. Shortly after confronting the squad and admitting his error in teaching them formations and other traditional football styles, he advises that the team play the Jenga style in the finals to show the world the Brazilian method of playing football. He also urges his players to enjoy the game and play well against Sweden in the finals. It's the day of the finals, and both teams are raring to go. The whistle blows, and the Swedish team scores 4 minutes later. The Brazilian fans are stunned to see the Swedish players swirling around Pelé, preventing him from receiving the ball. But the Brazilian players quickly recover, and Pelé assists on the team's first goal. The Brazilian squad scores one after the other, and so does Pelé. The final whistle sounds, and the game concludes with a score of 5-2. For the first time in history, Brazil wins the World Cup. Pelé's teammates rush to the ground and pull Pelé onto their shoulders. After Brazil wins the finals, the scene turns to the real world. In the last scene, we learn how the Brazilian president designated Pelé as a national treasure in 1961. Pelé has the global record for most goals and is also the world's youngest player to score a goal. He is also the first player in history to have won 3 FIFA World Cups. That was the end of the video.